All right, today I'm going to teach you 9.3. This is the last new lesson that you guys need to know before we have our quiz coming up later this week on Thursday. Today is all about perimeters and areas of composite figures. So I want you to take out your red pen, and we're going to talk about just a few words here. We have not talked about something called a composite figure before, but I want you to write this in. A composite figure is basically a figure or a shape that is made up of triangles, squares, rectangles, semicircles, and other two-dimensional figures. Let's look at this shape down here in blue. The first thing you can see that I have a shape there is a square, but that's not the only one. Jacoby, what other shape do you see down there in the blue? In the blue. A triangle, okay? So this is called a composite figure because it's made up of two different shapes. Guys, let's look at this orange figure over here. There is a rectangle, but there is also something else. Class, what is there? A semicircle. Today we're going to be finding both the perimeter and the area of composite figures. Remember, composite figures are figures that are more than one figures. Guys, remind me about perimeter. What will I have to find for perimeter?
The distance around the figure.
Very good. Okay, so I will just be focusing on the distance around the outside. So if you look right here, I don't care about the space on the inside. I just care about that perimeter or the distance around the outside. But then we've also got, today we're going to be finding the area. What will we have to do when finding the area of a composite figure? Separate into figures with the areas you know how to find, and then find the sum of those areas. All right, these are formulas you will have to have memorized. Our quiz is going to be on Thursday of this week, which is a little different. I want you to write this down because these will have to be memorized for your quiz and your test. Okay, so the first one, everyone say A equals 1/2 times base times height.
A equals 1/2 times base times height.
Okay, to the side of it, I want you guys to draw yourself a little triangle. How many of you have seen this little tiny square on a triangle before? Do you guys know what that's called? A 90-degree angle or a right angle. At the bottom of every 90-degree angle is what we call the base. So if you would, take your pencil, and I just want you to put a little B, showing us that's the bottom or that's the base of our triangle. Now we're taking the base times the height. The height will always be on this side of that 90-degree angle. It will never be the diagonal part over there. The next one, I want you to draw a picture of a square. If you remember, squares also always have the same exact sides all the way across. So do you guys know what you think S squared, what that S might stand for? A square, but what inside of the square? The side of it, okay? So we're going to take a side and multiply it times a side, and that's what S squared would be. The next one, everyone say A equals length times width.
A equals length times width.
All right, so draw yourself a rectangle. Now in this case, the length and the width, it doesn't really matter which one. I typically tend to say the length is the longer one and the width is the shorter one. But the order doesn't matter, and which one you say is which length is not going to matter either. For this right here, some people have said, what is that? It is an L. I put it in cursive because sometimes if I put just a regular straight up L, people think it looks like a number 1. Okay, so that's why I put mine as a cursive L. Next up, we have talked about semicircles and circles. What's the difference between a semicircle and a circle? Very good. A semicircle is simply a circle that's cut in half. So if you look at the two formulas, notice, everyone repeat after me, pi r squared.
Pi r squared.
Okay, so for this pi r squared, if I don't want a whole circle, I want a half a circle, all I do is cut it in half. And do you see that that is the formula for the area of a semicircle? As I said before, these are going to be formulas you want to have memorized before our quiz coming up over 9.1 to 9.3. Does anyone need more time on these formulas? Okay, let's look at this first example. It asked us to find the perimeter and the area of the figure. Before we do anything else, let's just look at this. Do you guys see that this is a composite figure? Yeah, because it has more than one figure or more than one shape. What are the shapes that we see there, class?
Semicircle and triangle.
Very good, a semicircle and a triangle. So the first thing it asked me to find is the perimeter. What does perimeter mean?
It's
The area around
The distance around.
the distance.
The distance around the outside of the figure. So right here, I want you guys to write P equals. Let's talk about some things that we know. Let's look at this first one right here. How long is that?
8 feet.
8 feet. So we're going to add 8 plus, how long is this right here?
6
6
feet.
feet.
So we're going to add 8 plus 6. And class, how long is this right here?
10
10.
feet.
That is not 10 feet. What is 10 feet?
Oh,
Oh, that's 5 feet.
This bottom part right here is 10 feet, but this part on the outside, guys, is a mystery. What is it called? We're just going to put a question mark there for now. What is it called the outside of a circle? It's not the perimeter.
the area.
It's not the area. It starts with a C. Circumference. Guys, have we ever learned about how to find the circumference of a circle?
Yes.
Yes, we learned about that way back in 9.1. I want you to go back to your notes in 9.1. I gave you 2 formulas to help you find the circumference of a circle. You wrote them in red pen at the top of 9.1. Guys, what are those 2 formulas for circumference of a circle?
C equals pi times d. C equals 2 times pi times r.
Very good, okay? So right now, what I want us to focus on is just this area right here, the space of my semicircle. Do you guys know the dotted line that we had there? That dotted line is how long? 10 feet. Guys, is this right here, this 10 feet that we just said, is this considered my diameter or my radius? Diameter. Everybody underneath the shape, I want you to write this. D equals 10 feet. So that distance across, I'll put it kind of bold, right here is 10 feet. But let's say I don't want the whole distance across. I just want the radius. What would the radius be of this semicircle right there? 5. How'd you get that?
You divide it or you cut it in half.
You just cut it in half or you divide it by 2. Now, with that information, I'd like you guys to just put a little cloud around that because that's some information we want to do for every single shape that we ever have. Okay, because that helps us just to identify the radius and the diameter. So now, let's go back to this question mark. We talked about now we need to find the circumference. Since it gave us the diameter, which formula do you think we're going to use? C equals pi times d or C equals 2 pi r? Pi times d, very good. So let's erase the question mark we have here, and we're going to put, instead of C equals, we need pi times the diameter. But if you remember, we are not finding the whole circle. I am only finding the semicircle. So if I'm just finding this semicircle, what is the formula for a semicircle? I have to divide it by 2. So let's go back to that formula, pi d divided by 2. Okay? The hardest part of composite figures is figuring out what formulas I need to use. Now that we have figured that out, the rest of the part should be fairly simple. Okay? So we know for our perimeter, one of the sides was 8, one of the sides was 6. And right now we are trying to figure out this mystery side over here, the outside. What do we always use for pi?
3.14.
Okay, so we're going to do 3.14. Multiply it times the diameter. What is the diameter?
10 feet.
10 feet. Okay, so right there where it says diameter, we are multiplying it times 10. And then we have to, because it's a semicircle, divide it by 2. Let's just focus on this piece right here, the question mark that we're trying to find, the outside of the circle. Is there anything I can reduce there?
Yeah, the 2 and the 10.
The 2 and the 10, what can they become?
A 1 and a 2.
A 1 and a 5. Now, you don't have to reduce. You'll get the same answer if you don't reduce, but you can reduce. Okay, so one side was 8, one side was 6. Now let's just focus on this. 3.14 times 5. What is that? 15.7. Okay, and you could divide it by 1, but when you divide it by 1, you get the same thing. So what you just discovered here, I'm going to erase the question mark. We just figured out that this side right here is 15.7 feet. So as I said before, we are now adding up all the sides, or all of these sides right there. When you add those up, Who can tell me what you get? Abigail, what'd you get?
29.7 feet.
P equals 29.7 feet. Class, should I square those units?
Oh, yes.
When do we square our units? Only when you're finding the formula, which is for area. Did I ask you to find the area here? What are we finding? Perimeter. So all we found here was the distance around the outside, which does not mean I want to know all of the space. If you go and look at the instructions, it says find the perimeter and find the area. So if you would, take your pencil and just kind of draw a line halfway down. On the right-hand side here, now we'll focus on what the area is of this shape. Okay, I want you to look at the top of our notes where it talks about the area. Read me the instructions it tells us at the top of 9.3 of what to do to find the area of composite figures. Go ahead. Separate into figures with areas you know how to find, and then find the sum of those areas. So the first thing we have to do is identify what shapes we have here. Guys, what are the two shapes you see in our composite figure? Okay, a triangle and a semicircle. So everyone, if you would, I want you to write A equals triangle plus a semicircle. Okay, so it says to figure out what the formulas are. Does anyone know the formula for a triangle?
A equals 1/2 times B times H.
Correct. Everyone write it down. 1/2 times base times the height. Plus, we need to put in the formula for a semicircle. Jocelyn, what's the formula for a semicircle?
A equals I R squared.
Excellent. Okay, so now we have identified what we have to do, and now we're just going to plug in the different numbers that we know for these formulas. Let's focus first on, I'm putting in blue, what the triangle is. Okay, so we are only looking at this triangle right here. As I look at that shape right there, I have to write 1/2 times base times height. Guys, what is the base?
6 feet.
6 feet. Okay, so we are going to have 1/2 times 6. And what's the height?
8.
8 times 8. Okay, so that's how we would find the triangle. Now let's go on to that semicircle. Plus, just the girls, what do I put in for pi? 3.14. Now remember, at the beginning of every problem, I am hoping we're going to put what the diameter and the radius is. Class, what is the radius for that semicircle?
10 feet.
Look right here.
Oh, 5 feet.
It is 5 feet. Remember, we have to cut the diameter in half. So times 5 squared. And then since it's a semicircle, we're going to divide it by 2. Okay, so on the left-hand side, you can see I have a blue triangle. I have a green semicircle, okay? Let's focus first on the blue triangle right now. It says A equals 1/2 times 6 times 8. Let's see what kind of mental math we can do. Class, what is half of 6? 3. What is 3 times 8? 3 times 8. 24. Okay, so what you guys just discovered is the space right here, the area of that is 24 feet squared. Does everyone understand how we found that area? Okay, now we still care about our green semicircle, so we are going to add in, looking at this part right here, what should I do first, according to Pemdas?
No,
The exponents. Okay, parentheses are what's first, but is there any work to do inside of those parentheses? No, so we're going to do our exponents. Guys, what is 5 squared? 25. So now instead we have 3.14 times 25. And remember, it's a semicircle, so we're dividing it by 2. Okay, once again, remember 24 inches squared is my triangle, but we are trying to figure out the area of this semicircle over here. What do you think I should do first now?
You should add it. You should divide.
I need to multiply before I divide. So let's multiply that top number. Guys, what's 3.14 times 25?
78.5.
All right, very good. Am I done with that? No, I still need to
Divide.
divide by 2. When you divide by 2, what do you get?
39.25.
Okay, so now you've just discovered 39.25 feet squared. I'll put it over here, 39.25. What do I need to do to those two numbers? Just add them together.
And you would get 63.25.
Okay, 63.25. Should I round that?
No.
Why not?
No. It's the exact.
It didn't ask me to. Unless the instructions ask you to round, I do not want you to round. So now we've got 63.25 feet. Why are we squaring those units? Because you found the area. That means I want all of the space on the inside of that composite figure over there. All right, for problem B, find the perimeter and the area of the figure. This is a composite figure because it's made up of 2 or more shapes. Guys, what are the shapes that you see here in this guy?
The square and semicircle.
Very good, square and semicircle. So first things first, let's focus on it asking us to find the perimeter. Remind me again, what does perimeter mean? The distance around the outside. So I am talking about this shape and that shape, this shape and that shape. So guys, which shape am I not talking about? The square in the middle. We're basically pretending right now we don't need to know anything about the square on the inside. All I am worried about is the outside shape. So you guys told me, what was this shape right here? A semicircle. Guys, what is the outside of a circle or a semicircle called? Circumference. Very good. So let's think back to what we know about circumference. There's 2 formulas. C equals 2 pi r or C equals pi times d. So let's just focus on this one little shape right here. What does it give me? The radius or the diameter?
Diameter.
Look right here. It gives me the distance all the way across. What is the distance all the way across called? Diameter. So I want us just to identify right here that we know the diameter is how long?
The diameter is
2 inches. Which means the radius is 1 inch. All you had to do was cut it in half. All right, so remember at the beginning of each shape, you want to identify these little things right here because you're going to need to know that, especially when you're finding the area. So right now we are only focusing on one of those little semicircles, okay? And you told me in order to find the perimeter or the circumference of a circle, we're going to take pi times d, but because it's a semicircle, I have to divide it by 2. Now looking at this very complicated composite figure, how many semicircles do you see there? 4. So I am going to have to either add that 4 separate times, or what could I do that's easier? Let's just multiply it by 4. So C equals, because I have 4 of them, I'm going to multiply pi d divided by 2 by 4. Okay, help me plug these things in. Luke, what do I plug in for pi?
3.14.
Very good. Every time, unless it tells otherwise, it's always going to be 3.14. Luke, what is the diameter of one of the semicircles?
2 inches.
2 inches. And then, since it's a semicircle, I have to divide it by 2. Michaela, is there anything that I can reduce or cross out?
2 and
2 and 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Now, if you didn't want to do that, you could simply say 3.14 times 2 and divide it by 2. You would get the same thing as doing it this easier way of just canceling out 2 divided by 2 equals 1. So, what's left there in my parentheses? All that's left is just 3.14. So basically what we just learned right there is the perimeter around the outside is, I'll put it right here, 3.14. Now, I could add in that I have to also add that 3.14, I have to add in this 3.14, and I have to add in this 3.14. Or you guys did it the easier way. You multiplied it together, and what did you get?
12.56.
12.56. What are the units? Inches. So all you just found out was the circumference around the outside, or the perimeter around the outside. Any questions on how we found perimeter? Okay, so the first thing it asked us to do was to find the perimeter, or in this case, we found the circumference. Now we want to find the area of the figure. Everyone flip back to your notes once again on the front side. Read to me how we find the area of composite figures. Go ahead. Separate into figures with areas you know how to find, then find the sum of those areas. So when finding the area, you really got to focus on what are the shapes I am talking about here. Guys, help me out. What are the shapes we're talking about here?
A square and semicircle.
Okay, first things first, we are looking at a square. All right, so you can see over there, I have put that into black over there. That's the square. And then what is the other part?
A semicircle.
Semicircle. How many semicircles are there?
4.
Okay, so plus, I'm going to add in, there are 4 semicircles. Okay, so now we've got to figure out what the formulas are for those. Guys, what was the formula for the area of a square?
A equals S squared.
S squared is correct. Plus, we're going to have to add in the formula for semicircles. We know that there's 4 of them, so I'll bring down that 4. But guys, what's the formula for the area of a semicircle?
A equals pi times r squared divided by 2.
Pi r squared divided by 2. Okay, as I said before, the hardest part is figuring out what are those formulas that I need. Are there any questions about what I've done so far? Okay. Let's plug in some numbers. Once again, I want you to focus just on that black square that we have in the center. Guys, what is the length of one of the sides?
2 inches.
2 inches. 2 squared. Plus, Madison, as we know, there are 4 semicircles there. What do I put in for pi? What is pi always? 3.14. Madison, what is the radius of one of the semicircles? 1. Very good. Remember, we will always have that information over there. Hopefully you remember to put that there first in a little cloud underneath or near your shape. So times 1, I've got to square that, and then we'll divide it by 2 because it's a semicircle. Let's talk about just the area of the square first. Jonathan, what is 2 squared? Ellie, can you help him? 4. How'd you get that? You multiply 2 times 2. So basically what you guys just figured out is this space right here in there is 4 inches squared. Now we want to talk about what we have to do for these little semicircles. As we know, there are 4 of those semicircles. Let's look at this mess right here. What should I do first?
You should do the
Exponents. Guys, what is 1 squared?
1.
What's 1 times 1?
1.
1 times 1 is 1. Okay, so that just becomes a little old 1. Then we've got 3.14 times 1. Guys, what's 3.14 times 1? It's just 3.14. But then we also have to divide it by 2. What is 3.14 divided by 2?
1.57.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to put that answer here. We're multiplying it times 1.57. So what you guys have just figured out, I'll put it over here in my composite figure. This is 1.57. But that's not the only thing. This one is also 1.57. Each and every one of those are 1.57 inches squared. So let's talk about Pemdas. In Pemdas, should I add these 2 together first, or should I multiply those 2 together first? You have to multiply first. So you guys go ahead and multiply that out. When you multiply that out, what do you get?
6.28.
6.28. So what that told me is over here in this shape, I added all the semicircles, 1.57, 1.57, 1.57, and 1.57. When you add all those together, you do get 6.28. But now I want to add the squares and the semicircles together. When you do that, Nasir, what do you get? 10.28. And what are your units? Excellent. Why did you square your units? Because we are solving for the area. Very good. And anytime it asks for the area or all the space in between, you always have to square the units. All right, we're going to do one final problem today. Finding the area of a circle. Have we learned about how to find area of a circle before? Yes. What's the formula for area of a circle? We wrote it down today. We also wrote it down in 9.2. Guys, look it up in your notes.
A equals pi times r squared.
A equals pi r squared. As I said before, for your quiz coming up over 9.1 to 9.3, you do need to have these formulas memorized, okay? Because if you don't have them memorized, you're not going to know what numbers to plug in. Let's focus on our shape first things first. I showed you the distance all the way across the circle. What is that distance all the way across the circle called? Diameter. If the diameter is 18, what is the radius? 9 centimeters. Okay, remember every time you want to go ahead and find that, and now you may start plugging in for finding the area of a circle. All right, let's see how you guys did. Guys, what do the instructions tell you to put in for pi? 3.14. What did we say the radius was of this circle? 9. And then we have to square it. Let me show you what I saw as I walked around. Many people said times 18. What's wrong with that? Here's what they did. They did 9 times 2. But 9 squared doesn't mean 9 times 2. What's it mean?
9 times 9.
It means 9 times 9. So guys, what is 9 times 9? 81. Instead, and this is what I saw many of you had, 254.34. But did the instructions ask us to round? Yes, to the nearest. Which number is in the 10th place? The 3. You've got to decide if the 3 should stay the same or get bigger. Guys, what is the answer?
Stay the same.
It stays the same. So what's the answer?
254.3.
What are the units? Centimeters squared. Why are you squaring the units? Because we are finding the area. How many of you would say you got that correct? Okay. Okay, so no, this one should be 254. Good observation. All right, so tonight there are 6 homework problems that you'll find on Big Ideas over today's lesson.